ask you about love. Probably quote me a sonnet. You've never looked at a woman and been totally vulnerable. Oh my God, what an angel on earth just for you. Just could rescue you from the depths of hell. And you wouldn't know what it's like to be her angel.
Let's just cut to the chase. I love fighting games, and I think they're rad as hell. If you watched our last video, you'll know that I also love competition, and I think that fighting games are probably one of the best types of games for competition. They give you this really hype, powerful feeling that not a whole lot of other games can do. Although, not all fighting games are created equal. Some fighting games have really long combo strings that are super hard to learn, like, oh god, oh no, oh god, how do you, what in that, and you, oh no, 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 no. Other games might have a super cool movement system that allows you to have all sorts of mix-up potential, kind of like, wow. 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 Whereas some other games have really simple base mechanics, but the rest of the way the game works allows for a super complex set of mind games to evolve. Kind of like, if I could just, with the blade and the pointy, and even some others may seem super easy and simple on the surface when you start playing them, and then as you start to play them more and more, they get more and more complex and evolve into something completely different, sort of like, oh cool, an ice ball. Oh my god, what is that? He's just gonna do it to him. However, today I'm not just trying to talk about how cool I think fighting games are. Instead, I want to talk about something I'm calling alternative fighting games. And these are fighting games that, when you play them, they feel like a fighting game. They got that hype energy, they're really cool, but when you read their mechanics or you look at them on paper, you can't tell that it's a fighting game unless you're playing it. So before I get directly into the examples I have for, alternative fighting games, I want to talk about a couple of games that kind of walk the line. So this would be a game that has most of the same conventional mechanics as other games that are fighting games, except they have something special, some sort of twist or some sort of extra mechanic that changes them enough to set them in their own category. They're not necessarily what I would call an alternative fighting game, but they're unique enough that I wanted to talk about them so that you could get an idea of the types of things that make a game alternative. So, here are some fighting games that are almost alternative. But I would like to preface this section by saying most of these games are built out of the core mechanics of most fighting games in the conventional way, but they have enough different about them that makes the experience of playing them feel wholly different to other fighting games. But I wouldn't necessarily call them alternative fighting games because, like most fighting games, they've got, combos and health bars and all that stuff that makes normal fighting games. Samurai Showdown is a game I have played only a little bit of, which is more than I can say for most of the other games that I'm going to talk about in this video, and I'm so sorry that I'm a hack and a fraud, and maybe by the time this video comes out, I'll have played some of these games. But that being said, for this video, I have supplemented my experience with extensive research from people who actually have played these games, and good old-fashioned YouTube video research. This game has your typical health system, and the movement is fairly standard with backdashes, jumps, and character-specific mobility options like double jumps and wall bounces. This game also has a run mechanic which can lead into alternate versions of each character's normal attacks. This isn't completely standard to most fighting games, but it also isn't completely unique to Samurai Showdown. This game also has a fairly robust defensive system using a mishmash of mechanics from other SNK games or other franchises in general, such as things like Just Defend, where pressing back to block at the right moment will remove all of the chip damage from an attack and build your rage meter. What makes this game stand out, and why I consider it to be walking the line between alternative and regular fighting games, is the way that it treats combos and damage output. In Samurai Showdown, you do have some minor combo strings, and they will be very important to winning a match, but they are much shorter and very concise. Most combos are no longer than 3 inputs. Not 3 hits, because some attacks have like multiple hits or chain and whatnot. On top of this, it has a minimalist approach to combo strings. Samurai Showdown attacks deal massive damage. Look at that damage!
What the hell is even that?
The goal here is to emphasize play where you try to never get hit and land any possible hits you can, because each hit you make really matters. Many normals deal almost a quarter to a third of the enemy health in a single hit. I like to think of this as circumventing the need for long combo strings in favor of defensive and mostly mobility-based skills, where you replace these long combos that you have to wait for your opponent to finish all of their inputs with just like a single hit or 2 hits. That way you streamline the process of damage dealing. This allows players to spend any time they would have been practicing combo execution with mastering the base mechanics of the game. From there, mind games and positioning are far more relevant, where input execution gives way to having the reads. You fool, I've already read that book. Killer Instinct is another game that I've only played a tiny bit of, but what makes me want to put it in this video is its approach to combos and damage output. Opposite of Samurai Showdown. In fact, Killer Instinct is so unique with its combo system that I would say it leans even harder into the alternative fighting game style of design. This is about to be a drastic oversimplification, so bear with me, but in Killer Instinct, you build combos using your normals and supers in a way that are almost universal for every character in the game. Depending on which type of punch or kick you press, your attacks will have different properties, ranging from multiple slower hits that deal more damage to quicker hits that deal less damage. This is fairly common for other 6-button fighter games out there, and the execution in Killer Instinct is incredibly simple. You can essentially just mash buttons to make combos. It makes long combo strings a cakewalk. As long as you alternate between auto doubles and linkers, as they're called, you've got yourself a combo. However, as you'll get into later, the intricacies of Killer Instinct do not lie in your ability to make a combo. But let's continue with the basic description of the game first. Each attack and super move will deal small amounts of damage that barely put a dent in your opponent's health, but will also build this white meter across their health bar with each hit. By executing what is called a combo ender, you'll be able to deal the entire white bar as actual damage to their health. This means that long combos aren't the focus, but properly ending those combos after dealing out sufficient number of hits is the focus. Additionally, each character in Killer Instinct has its own special properties that allow their combos to be put together in different ways and allow them to reach the opponents in different ways. For example, Glacius can do all of his normals and specials from across the screen, at a sacrifice to not being able to dash forward or backward. Okay, so now let's get into the juicy bits of this game. The thing that, when combined with everything else I've just told you, might just make this the best fighting game ever, and definitely makes it a contender for walking the line on alternative fighting games. Most combos in Killer Instinct will allow you to use almost any of your attacks in any order. Now, you might be asking, wait, if I can just go off on a combo alternating auto doubles and linkers over and over until I feel like ending my combo, doesn't it just make it a simplified version of other combo systems? You touch your opponent and deal 40 to 50% of their health, and then they just watch you perform that combo? No. Because this is where the major defensive mechanic of the game comes into play. The Combo Breaker! Combo breakers are executed by pressing either light punch and light kick, medium punch and medium kick, or high punch and high kick together. If you press them at the same time as your opponent at that point in the combo, you will break their combo. This system not only incentivizes varied attack patterns, but it also incentivizes paying attention to the game so you don't get caught out. You have to pay attention to what your opponent's doing, because if you press a combo breaker and it doesn't match what they pressed, then you're locked out of trying to do a combo breaker for 3 seconds, and that's going to give your opponent 3 whole seconds to make the longest combo possible and then end their combo dealing massive damage. And that's just the basics of Killer Instinct. I'm no expert on this game, but I feel like these are things that would make it close to an alternative fighting game. If you have any other questions or want to learn more about this game, I'd suggest watching Maximilian Dude on YouTube. He does a lot of fighting game content, but his favorite game is Killer Instinct, so he would know way more about this than me. Okay, so while I have played Virtua Fighter before, after watching like 2 YouTube videos on it, I now realize I haven't actually played the game. Like, I had no idea it was this deep. And I honestly am not the person to talk about this game, so like, please watch any video from anyone who actually understands it. But I just wanted to mention it real quick here because it not only pioneered the 3D fighter genre, but it's also one of the most deep and interesting looking fighting games I've come across. So please, don't take what I have to say as gospel. I will leave some links in the description. One of them will be a comparison of Virtua Fighter's depth versus Tekken, and the other will be a long deep dive into how to play the game. Sorry I'm being so vague about this. I'm going to try and just sum it up with my reaction here. Virtua Fighter is a game about anticipating the situation and assessing the best action. It's a game about understanding mechanics and applying what you learn. Every character is viable and their whole move list is all just viable tools. Repeating the same thing over and over will get you absolutely destroyed, and each character can be played in a myriad of different ways, which allows each player to leave their personal touch on a character. All of this while maintaining an incredibly balanced meta for competitive play, and I think that's something special that not every fighting game can say. Real quick before I get into actual alternative fighting games, I want to give some honorable mentions. These games have mostly the same mechanics as your conventional fighting game, but there was one thing about them that made them special and made them kind of stand out from your average title. Our first honorable mention here is Bloody Roar. Bloody Roar is a game I have never actually played before, so I'll be quick on this. The game involves players having 2 states, a human mode and an animal mode. Each has a different set of combos and super moves, and transforming acts as a combo breaker and uses your super bar up. However, when you take damage in animal form, it takes health from your super bar rather than your normal health, which is kind of neat, I think. The idea of each character having 2 forms which they can flip back and forth between is a pretty unique mechanical idea for a fighting game, and that's why I think it deserves an honorable mention, because it pushes it ever so slightly towards the alternative fighting game area, but it's still pretty much your conventional fighting game. The other honorable mention for this section is another game that I've also not played before called Melty Blood. But the game is free, so maybe I should just give it a try. Anyway, this is a game that gives you a lot of options. Its mobility options are nuts, its combo potential is ridiculous, some characters have infinite combos, but what makes this game interesting to me, and specifically for this video, is the moon system. Defensive mechanics, offensive mechanics, and super bar each change depending on whether you are in crescent moon, half moon, or full moon, which completely changes the way the character is played. Each moveset turns into 3 movesets essentially because of how much each moon changes your incentives. I don't know, it looks pretty anime, and I love that shit. Alright. It's time for the title of this video, Alternative Fighting Games. And like I said in the intro, alternative fighting games are games that when you play them, they feel like a fighting game, but their mechanics and rules are very different from a conventional fighting game. To the point that if someone who had never seen or heard of the game saw some footage of it or was watching you play it, they probably wouldn't say it's a fighting game. But once you get your hands on it, you're like, oh yeah, this feels like a fighting game.
So next up we have Dkick. Dkick is a fighting game with just 2 buttons, jump and dive kick. There's no movement, dashes, counters, supers, or complex inputs. This game is incredible in its ability to add depth without adding complexity. Each character has a different jump height, speed, and kick angle. Additionally, each character has their own special properties unique to them that can change the way a match plays out. And while this isn't one of my favorite games, there is no denying the innovation of design involved in a game like this. The game itself is a parody of fighting game culture, and revels in the ridiculousness of having a fighting game where you only do 2 things: jump and dive kick. Yet, the game itself is so well made, and it's just fun to play. Nidhogg is a 2D game about fencing? Well, at least that's what it looks like. But really, much like other fighting games, it is about choosing the right move to respond to your opponent. In Nidhogg, each player has a sword, and you can run, jump, and duck as your movement option. Your goal is to kill the opponent and move past them to the next screen. Once there, your opponent will respawn again. You will have to do this multiple times to reach the end, or the Nidhogg, the creature that eats you, in which case you win. One hit with the sword kills you, so this game kind of feels like a fighting game tug of war. Players can move their sword position between high, mid, and low. If your sword is high when your opponent strikes high, you block their strike. Same is true for low and mid. This gives the combat a very rock, paper, scissors type of feel. Players can also throw their sword. A thrown sword acts as a projectile and can be blocked if your opponent's sword connects with it. This makes throwing a sword mostly good for when the opponent's back is turned and they are running, or if they're unarmed. After throwing a sword, you must pick it back up again, or you can punch your opponent to death. Punches and air kicks do not kill in one hit, so while you're facing an opponent with a sword, it is very risky. You also have the ability to hit while crouching, which cannot be blocked unless your opponent themselves is also crouching. But with this kind of attack, it's only kicks, and it's not going to deal that much damage compared to a sword. Nidhogg gives you that exciting fighting game feeling while being a completely unique experience. It doesn't have combos, it doesn't have health bars or special moves. You and your opponent are equipped with the exact same moves and set of options. This is an alternative fighting game through and through.
The first two games we talked about so far were fairly simple for alternative fighting games. And while they both are pretty fun, their depth can only go so far. So for this next one, I wanted to go somewhere with a bit more of a learning curve. That game is For Honor. Now you may remember back in 2017 when this game came out, people leaving in droves because of the horrible peer-to-peer networking and broken balance whenever new characters would come out. But that's not the game I'm here to talk about. I am here to talk about For Honor in the year of our Lord 2020, or 2021. Well, the video I've linked in the description talks about it in the year 2020, so we'll go with that. Please watch that video because it goes over what makes the game good now versus release, and I'm only going to be going over the basic mechanics of the game for what makes it worthy of the alternative fighting games title. In For Honor, you play as one of three factions, or archetypes of characters: Knights, Vikings, and Samurai. Later on, a fourth faction, the Wu Lin, was added, and they were essentially ancient Chinese archetype. For Honor is what you would get if you allowed Hidetaka Miyazaki to design a fighting game. It utilizes slower, intentional combat in which a player must dedicate half of their workday and 40% of their yearly gross income in order to successfully perform an attack. Everything takes stamina, and if you run out of stamina, you get very tired and very sleepy. A fighting game with stamina? What the heck are you doing here, Ubisoft? There are two main types of attacks, lights and heavies. Not too special. However, there are three different directions you can make these attacks from: right, left, and overhead. Each of these requires you to switch your stance before performing the attack, and it will have different properties. More importantly though, blocking in For Honor is also directional, meaning to block an attack, you need to switch to the stance that matches the direction your opponent's attack is coming from. Some characters, like assassins, can only hold that block for a limited amount of time, while others, like heavy characters, keep their block up in that stance until you switch stances or until you take a different action. Blocking light attacks will stop your opponent from attacking more, and blocking heavies will just mitigate the damage but not stop them from continuing. Characters also have zone attacks that are specific to them, which attack in a wide area. This attack always comes from the same direction. When an enemy attack is coming in, if you press heavy attack in the direction that attack is coming from, you're going to parry it. This will give you momentum to continue onto your opponent. You can also dodge attacks, which is incredibly helpful for when your opponent throws out a move that is unblockable, like a bash. You can also grab your opponents and throw them in a direction. This is especially good for whenever you are near a wall or obstacle, because it will stun them and give you free damage. There are a lot more other mechanics in this game, but needless to say, it's a deep and rewarding game to master. There are some small combos, and there's some special moves depending on your character, but the actual feel of the game is so unique that when you compare it to other fighting games, it fits into the alternative fighting game category way better, especially when you play the game as 1v1 fights. I adore this game, and if you like dueling in Dark Souls, this is a fighting game for you.
So, much like For Honor, Absolver is a much more complex example of an alternative fighting game. In fact, the combat system of Absolver has a lot in common with For Honor, so let's make this quick. Like For Honor, Absolver is an action game where combat takes place in a 3D space. You can attack from multiple angles, or stances, and you can also block from that angle. In Absolver, there are 4 angles rather than just the 3 of For Honor. Though Absolver is more like an RPG due to its open world design and character progression. Each player can customize their character and slowly fight to empower themselves to become an Absolver. Additionally, Absolver allows you to fully customize your fighting style in the form of the combat deck. While Absolver does have a huge amount of variety in its options, it doesn't have the same level of tight design that For Honor has. Where Absolver differentiates itself from being just an RPG is in its multiplayer mechanics. As you venture through the world of Absolver, most of the enemies that you encounter will be enemy AI. However, you will also run into actual players. So much of the fun of the game boils down to its one-on-one duels, so much so that you can even play them in multiplayer matchmaking outside of the campaign. These one-on-one duels are what make Absolver feel like a fighting game. For Honor and Absolver are similar in the things that make them alternative fighting games.
Real quick, I'd like to mention Super Smash Bros. As a game that would totally qualify as an alternative fighting game if it weren't for the fact that it essentially invented its own genre of game. That being said, it really does kind of fit the dynamic of such a game. The game has some unique systems and mechanics, like the fact that you only die by falling off the side of the screen. And when you take damage, instead of losing health, you have a percentage that goes up, which means the higher that percentage is, the farther each attack is going to throw you across the screen. But alas, it's kind of its own genre and its own fighting game type, so I can't really call it an alternative fighting game. Really quickly, I would like to mention a Smash clone called Brawlhalla. It has a very interesting combat system. In Brawlhalla, you win much the same as you do in Smash by dealing more damage and hitting them so that they get knocked off the side of the screen. Each character has the same set of punches and kicks to work with. However, each character also has 2 different weapons. Now, this is much different than Smash because each character is almost like having 2.5 whole characters inside of them. Players do not start with one of their weapons equipped though, so they'll have to pick them up when they drop from the sky. When a weapon is picked up, it will randomly be one of the 2 possible weapons that that character can have. Each of those weapons will have specific special attacks that are unique to the character who wields them. These are called signature attacks, and they are essentially the smash attacks from Super Smash Bros. I like this game because you don't really have to learn every character to understand the game, and also the air control is like a lot better than Smash Bros. Each character has like a triple jump and a dash and a recovery, and if you hit a wall grab, you can do them all over again. It's kind of insane. If you learn how to use one weapon in this game, you know how to use all of that same type at least halfway. So it's also super easy to learn. Anyway, I just kind of think the game's neat. This is it, everybody. This is the whole inspiration for us making this video. Lethal League. If you don't know about this game, you should. It's incredible. It is a game that I would say epitomizes the idea of an alternative fighting game. It is a game that if someone looked at it and had never heard of it before, they'd be like, y'all playing 2D baseball? It's really fun, super high energy. Like when you're playing that game, it feels like a fighting game because it's super hype, the music's really good, and it's like I'm sorry, I don't know how else to explain it. It's a really good game, but the mechanics only are tangentially fighting game related, so that's what we're going to talk about here for a little while, so you can get the impetus for making a game about this kind of version of fighting games. Lethal League started as a flash game prototype in which you could play as one character and you hit a ball back and forth until that ball hit a player and fucking killed them. After being a well-received game in the fighting game community, it was fully developed by Team Reptile into a 2D arena fighter with a roster of characters and a more fleshed out mechanical design, which was released in 2014. Then, in 2017, Lethal League Blaze was released, which improved upon the former game in almost every conceivable way. It replaced 2D sprites with 3D models and added new characters and new mechanics to spice it up. And today, I will be focusing on Lethal League Blaze when I'm telling you why you should play it and why it's an alternative fighting game. You fucking kill people with a ball. Ball is no longer life. Ball is Thanatos, god of death. If we're gonna talk about Lethal League, we probably gotta talk about how you play it. You can move left and right, and you can jump. Most characters can double jump and also have a special mobility option that is unique to them. In Lethal League, your goal is to hit a ball so that it changes to your color, moves faster, and bounces off the wall to hit your opponent. In Blaze, this will deal damage to the opponent based on how fast the ball was traveling. If the speed of the ball is fast enough to one-hit kill your opponent, their health bar will flash. You can hit the ball in a couple different ways. You can hit it up, down, or forward, which will increase the speed a little and give you a different angle based on your input. You can also hold down this to charge it up, increasing the speed that you're going to add to the ball. Jumping and hitting downward on the ball when it is directly under you is what's called a spike, and it'll do exactly what you did before, except for do it in a straight down angle. You can also do what is known as a smash hit by jumping and pressing left or right whenever you hit it. This will double the speed of the ball the first time you hit it and has a massive hitbox, making it relatively easy to hit with. So this is going to be your bread and butter for this game. So players will spend a lot of time in the air trying to land one of these, since when your ball is your color, it can't hurt you. However, smash hits are a lot easier for your opponent to respond to, since it can only go in one direction at one angle. Now, let's talk about the things you can do that aren't hitting the ball. First, you have bunting. It pauses the speed of the ball while it's in an arc and makes it neutral, which means it doesn't hurt either players if it hits them. This allows players an easier time of getting to it and hitting it, and it also allows for some sick setups. You can also grab and throw a ball left, right, or down. This is good in a similar way to bunting in that it removes the ball from its normal speed and gives you more of a moment to control it. However, grabbing is much harder to execute while the ball is in mid-flight than a bunt, but it keeps your color after you let go of it. Plus, it feels incredibly sick to just pelt some chump with it. Whenever a ball is at high speeds, hitting it will cause what is known as hit lag. Hit lag is how long it takes for the ball to release and fly after it connects. The faster the ball was going, the longer the hit lag is going to be. At the bottom of the screen, there's a boombox, the little bar that fills up to let you know when the hit lag is going to release. That way you can hop up and hit it right out from under him. And that leads on to our next part, your defensive options. You see, if you don't want them stealing the ball from you over and over out of your hit lag, you can do what's called a parry. By pressing and holding the bunt button while you're in hit lag, you can parry. This causes a blue swirl to appear around the ball, which will deflect and stun any enemy that tries to hit the ball while you're parrying. Holding it will make it continue for the full duration, while tapping it will just make it pop up quickly. You can only parry once per hit lag. And why might you want to cancel out of your parry early? Well, that's because our next defensive tool is the counter to the counter option, grabbing. You see, grabbing isn't just a cool alternative to hitting, it's also the anti-defense tool. While your opponent is parrying a hit lag, you can hop in there and press grab, which will steal the ball from under them and straight dome them. Additionally, parrying makes hit lag last longer while you're doing so, which will make grabbing it that much easier, so be careful. If an opponent attempts to grab a ball from your parry and you decided to cancel your parry early, then they're going to be stunned as though they were trying to hit a parry. It's pretty neat. The last defensive option you have under your belt is the wake up. If you're ever knocked down by the ball but not killed, you can press the hit button while you're down to perform a wake up, which will swirl around you and grab the ball if it's near. This will make it your color and allow you to get a free hit on it, which your opponent cannot hit first. The game also has a special move system where each time you hit the ball, you'll build up a special meter. Hitting the ball out of a bunt will build up 2 bars instead of 1, and once you have 4 bars, you can perform a special move, which is different for each character, usually performed by double hitting the hit button. Lethal League has a roster of 12 characters, each has their own special hit angles, movement, speed, jump heights, mobility options, and super moves. Learning them takes some time, but learning the base mechanics will be the most important thing to get the hang of this game. So, just pick whoever you think looks the coolest. If you want a good rundown of each character, check out the video by Yako, linked in the description.
So we just want to take a short moment to call out the amazing aesthetic of Lethal League. The cel-shaded visuals and technopunk audio design of Lethal League are not so subtly inspired by Jet Set Radio. There's literally even a character named Jet. I mean, some of the music was even co-composed by Hideki Naganuma. And while Lethal League isn't winning any awards for deep lore and storytelling, the characters are so memorable and well designed to help you get a feel for the game before you even touch a controller. Except you, cheese man. The way the colors go negative when you hit the ball past a certain speed threshold, the way the arena changes when things are speeding up, it all adds to the hype as fuck experience we call Lethal League. Blaze, and the music. I mean, what can I say? God, the music. Okay, look, we've probably been playing the music the whole time for this section, but I just want you to listen to this. Just listen to this. That should tell you everything you need to know.
And that's the deal. Lethal League is the quintessential alternative fighting game. It is hype and fast-paced, it is exhilarating and fun to watch. But most importantly for this video, it defies all expectations of classical fighting games while maintaining the intense versus feeling of those fighting games. No weak shit. Yes, there's a health bar and a super bar, but the rest of the game employs a completely different set of mechanical expectations that can only be summed up as trigonometry. And what other fighting game you know requires you to use high school math to dominate your small-brained opponents? Screw 4D chess, we're playing Pythagorean chess. The game works you on an axis that requires you to use a new set of skills. It breaks out of tropes like memorizing combos and steep learning curves, and replaces them with a solid set of mechanics that anyone can learn. But no one can master. It's not possible. I swear I'm not bad at the game. It's very mean. There is no footsie game or combo breaking. There isn't a long move list to learn and prepare for. And yet, Lethal League is unmistakably a fighting game. One game into playing it, and you'll know what I'm talking about. And I think that makes this undoubtedly an alternative fighting game that every single one of you must now go out and buy for every console and Steam account you have. That's an order. Or Nitro will rejoin the force and freaking arrest you for not participating in capitalism hard enough. Because that's what police do. You're still here. Well, what if, and this is hypothetically speaking, you clicked the subscribe button and also the like button, and for the sake of argument, you rang the bell and commented below this video to let us know what you think. But please do those things, and also buy Lethal League to give Team Reptile money, because the game's fucking good. That game needs a competitive scene, like a big one. Like, it has one, I think, but not like a big one. It's not well known enough. It needs to be up there with like Smash. It needs to be up there with all of these fighting games. Replace Smash. Smash has a dumpster fire for competitive scene, so let's replace it with Lethal League, which is a good game. Not that Smash isn't a good game, I'm just saying that you should do. Anyway, thanks for watching this video. Things are probably going to be ramping up here now. We're going to be releasing more videos. I'm sorry about all the clinkings you're hearing from these chopsticks. They're plastic chopsticks, but I like. They're really cool. Anyway. Yes, I did another video where I made up a term for something, but it's because I'm like creating a category of an idea. And Lethal League is this game that feels so much like a fighting game, but really it isn't doing that. It's like using party mechanics, essentially like a party game mechanics, to do cool shit. It's shit, dude. You should see the fights.